we are walking alongside Scott and a couple other people on the medical team to try to figure out the safest way to be able to meet with our students and have our ministry outside, socially distanced, wearing masks in person though. So I'm really excited for that. Hopefully it's going to be soon. But before we get started with this, I'm just going to go ahead and pray real quick. And then Casey is going to go over some of the results that we got from the parent survey that we sent out last week. But if you'll pray with me real quick. God, I thank you for the fact that even though we cannot meet in person, we still have technology to meet on Zoom and see each other's faces. God, this is a big conversation. It's a heavy topic because we're talking about the safety of our students. And that's who and what we care about most here. God, I ask that you help us make the right decisions as we go through this process, and that you give us a clear head and a clear mind and a clear heart for that. In your name I pray. Amen. Okay. So I'm going to share the results real quick, and then Casey will go ahead and take it over. I think I might have accidentally exited out, so let me pull that back up.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody who did take our parent survey. We didn't have as many respondents as I had hoped. I really wanted to get a big pool of input on that so that we could get as accurate of a depiction as possible, but we'll go by what we can go by, which is, I think we had 27 respondents, varying grades, so it at least gives us a small picture. But Megan's going to share her screen here, and I just want us to be able to look and see what the results were from that, so we kind of know that our temperature taking, so to speak, no pun intended there, as we continue. So top one right there is just what grades the students were in of the parents that took the survey. So semi-interesting, but what I'm more interested in is that schooling choice. I really wanted to know with this, just where we were at with, as we're inviting students to potentially come back on campus, how many of them are back in brick and mortar, how many of them are staying home and doing online, just so that we can kind of gauge more accurately where our students have been during the week before they come in on Sunday nights. So if you notice here, brick and mortar has the highest percent with 33.3 and 9 total responses. However, what's more accurate in my opinion is if you look at all of the non-brick and mortar options and add them up. So if you take My PCS Online and Pinellas Virtual School, the two different online options, and then someone wrote in My PCS, which they just want to be creative and, you know, didn't want to select the one we had. So that's great. They're just flexing their creativity. It's fine. And then pulling them out to homeschool is another option. So if you add up all of those non-brick and mortar options, you get 13 responses and compared to the 9 that chose brick and mortar. So just so we've got, we can wrap our heads around that of those who responded, more people are choosing to school their kids online, which is what we saw in that Pinellas County update. I don't know if y'all saw that, but I think it was 60% of people are choosing to do online. However, that's a little, from my understanding, even that is a bit skewed, because I don't think that everybody actually took that survey or reported. So of those who responded in the Pinellas County survey, 6% are doing online. So that's helpful for us to know. And then in terms of comfortability, 16 respondents out of 27, so 59.26% said they're currently comfortable with the proposal that we have sent out, which would be, just as a refresher, tonight we're talking about the possibility of doing small group gatherings outside, socially distanced, wearing masks, screened ahead of time. So taking all of those precautions plus going outside. With that said, 59% of people said that they would be comfortable doing that right now. And then if you look, 33% said that they would be comfortable after there's been a decline in COVID cases for 2 weeks in the county. And then someone else wrote in essentially the same thing. So you can add in a little bit more to that. And then there was one respondent who said they would only be comfortable with their student participating online for right now. So that's where we're at. I'm not going to analyze those results too much. I just wanted to put them out there so everyone's on the same page as we keep chatting. Oh, hey, Jeannie. Oh, hey, Jonathan. Two of my favorites.
See you, Jean.
What now?
Jean's muted. She's trying to talk, but she's muted.
Jeannie, you're muted. But she says it's fine. It's fine. So we just went over survey results, you guys. If you missed it, we can send these out in like a follow-up email if that would be helpful for anybody. But that's where our people are at in terms of who did respond, is that majority is doing a non-brick and mortar option for this coming semester in terms of schooling, and majority is comfortable right now with the method of gathering that we're talking about tonight. So that's where we're at. And then from here, Scott is going to do what he did with our ACDC families before those little kids went back to the preschool side of things. And he's just going to kind of walk us through an overview of things and help equip parents with the tools that you guys need to make the decision that's right for your kids. And then what I'm most excited about is your Q&A time that Scott's going to have for us after. And that's where you guys are just going to be able to talk back and forth, ask him any questions that you have. Scott's one of the medical professionals on our reopening task force. And what I also appreciate is that Scott is a former small group leader, and he went with his class from 5th to 12th grade. So he's a great person to have in these conversations, because not only does he understand the medical side of things, but he also understands that small group ministry mentality. And so with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Scott and let you take it away. Oh, Richard.
I interrupt real quick because I got to go. I was planning to be with you, but because of Jay's condition, I'm having to do the choir tonight. So just wanted to say thank you all for being here tonight, for what you're doing with your kids and opening up to the possibility. We trust Scott. We trust our medical team. We trust our leadership. The one thing I would say to do the quick handoff is we've done this already with the preschool, and they've been active since, what, was the beginning of June, Scott?
Yes.
Yep.
And
the protocols they've been observing there are somewhat similar, and actually not as extreme as what we're seeking to do with your students. So I think this is actually an even safer way to go than what we can do with a full-time day-long school opportunity. Right. This is a time for students where they can just be outside together. So just want to say thank y'all, and I got to head out, but have a good night.
Thank you, Richard.
See you, Richard. Well, hey, y'all. So thank you, Casey, for that nice introduction, and I will tell you that the youth group is near and dear to my heart. Honestly, will go down as one of the best experiences in my life to have been able to do that. And frankly, it's why we're here tonight. If you were to say strictly from a statistical point of view, what is the safest thing to do? It would be, well, we all probably should lock ourselves in our house and have our groceries delivered and not venture out. And for a while we were, that was probably the right thing to do. When we did that back a few months ago, it bought Pinellas County Emergency Medical Services and our healthcare system overall, it bought us time to be prepared for what actually is happening right now. So that was good, but the other part of that was, I will confess that I thought, hey, maybe 30, 60 days and we'll kind of roll over this thing and we'll get back to normal. It's pretty obvious that we're in this for the much longer haul. So I want you to know that we're not really talking to any other small groups. ACDC, which is the Anona Childhood Development Team, they did reopen, and we talked to them about the benefits of reopening. And I think we have to remember that not only is childhood development at stake, and that was a huge part of it, is the socialization of the children, but also the reality that many of those parents simply have to go to work. And so their children have to be somewhere. And so it might as well just be an environment that has been made as safe as possible. So why I'm telling you this is because I'm going to challenge you in a minute with a question, about why is this important? Why are we talking to only the youth group about the possibility of getting together on campus? So let me go ahead and share screen. I want to back up just for a second and tell you this. I am not an expert. I'm a paramedic, and I'm a registered nurse. I'm district chief for the Clearwater Fire Department. We get regular updates. Got one yesterday from a very, very talented physician who is our county medical director. So I tell people all the time, I don't watch the news anymore. I think a lot of it is sensationalized, and I can give you, if you're interested, some really good websites to watch in terms of tracking the COVID situation. So I'm not an expert, but I do have some thoughts, and I want to tell you very specifically that I'm not going to be able to tell you tonight, parents, what to do. What I'm hoping, our goal for tonight, is to equip you, to give you enough information so that you might be able to make that decision. I want to tell you right now that there is no right or wrong answer. For those parents on the survey that felt comfortable now, that's completely a right answer. And for those parents that said, I'm not comfortable yet, that's completely a right answer, because all of our circumstances are going to be different. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to highlight a few of those for you tonight. And so as we start, and I'll make this rhetorical, I won't make you, won't make you unmute and get into a long discussion, but I really want you to ask yourself, why is our youth group important for you and your student? And the reason I start off with this slide is it's the heart of what we're going to talk about. Because frankly, if it's not important, we probably shouldn't be doing this. Really, if it's not important, the safer bet would be just hold off another couple of months. I'll tell you my thought. I can only go back to when I was a small group leader, and I was very fortunate that my oldest daughter not only allowed me, but relished the fact that I was her small group leader. I know a lot of people don't get to be a small group leader for one of their own children. And it was a very special time for her and I all those years. A lot of really cool moments that we got to share. But I realized that during that time, my daughter and we have two daughters, and they had a lot of influences on them. At that age, as we get into youth group, our students are, and I hate to say it, parents, but their focus is shifting away from us as parents and shifting more towards their peers. And now, even more so, their social media and what they're seeing, on all of their social media resources. And so I think it's always been a crucial function of the church to be part of that influence. Our children, our students are doing nothing less than choosing the foundation upon which they're going to build their spiritual house. And we want them to choose that solid rock. And that's why I think this particular time in their life is so important as they build, and as our very, very dedicated youth team and small group leaders provide that essential guidance. And so the reason I spent a minute talking about that is because the benefit of this is really important, because we have to weigh it against the risk that we're going to take. And there is some risk. There's some risk to send our students anywhere, to send them to school, to send them to Publix. And as you'll hear me talk in a minute, there's some risk to allow our driving age students to get in a car and go anywhere. And that was many sleepless nights for me. I can tell you that. So the benefit of this is very, very important. And I happen to think that we have a very significant benefit here in that our small group leaders and our leadership team for youth is so dedicated that they're willing to go to extraordinary lengths to be together with your kids. And I think that that's huge. So now that we've established benefit, that's the answer to the question, why is MYF important to you and your student? And that is the part of the scale that is the benefit. And hopefully it's very important. I didn't want to use anybody else's kids, so I used my own. That's my daughter from some years ago, on the bottom right of your screen there, sitting next to her friend Rachel. And she's a mom now with 7-year-old twins, and so we've come a long way since then. But I'm just going to tell you, proud dad, just give me a minute, that I see her passing on, her spiritual wellness and her spiritual strengths onto her girls, her twin girls, and it almost makes me want to cry. So again, we come back to this benefit and these formative years, and why this might be so important. Well, look, parents, if we're going to talk about the benefit, then we have to talk about the risk. And right now, the risk is this thing we call COVID-19. Coronavirus, by the way, is the bug. COVID-19 is the disease that we get once the bug gets inside of us and starts to replicate itself as viruses do. So COVID-19 is the disease, coronavirus is the bug. And our whole goal here is going to be to avoid exposing anybody, our small group leaders and our students, to the coronavirus. So anytime we talk about a risk, we have to consider two things. And the first thing that we have to consider is the potential. And when we talk about risk potential, it is, what are the chances that the bad thing will happen? How likely is it? And so this is where we turn to our statistics. And this slide is from several days ago. I've got a couple other slides that I will show you. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on here. The statistics are important, and I think that you should follow them, parents. I think you should know, as you look on the MYF decision and the school decision, I think you need to know, you need to have an accurate picture of what actually is happening across all demographics with this COVID virus. And this is where I usually say, statistics are really important. You need to know how likely it is that this might occur, but at the same time, statistics are impersonal. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you that students in the age group we're talking about, statistically, are not that severely affected. However, if one of our students contracts this disease, then all of a sudden it's not a statistic anymore. It's not a number anymore. Now it's a real thing, and we put a name and a face to it and a family to it. So it is important that we understand the extent of the problem. I will tell you, these numbers are a couple days old. You can see that new cases are rising pretty significantly in that 25 to 34 age group. Right below that is the age group we're talking about, is the 15 to 24. But these are tested positive cases, not necessarily hospitalizations, and this doesn't speak to severity. So we've known this for several weeks now. What happened was we had this thing taken off. We did the stay-at-home orders. We got to Memorial Day. I will confess that at Memorial Day, I thought, okay, this thing's going to lay down for the summer and we're probably good. We got back together with the grandchildren. And then right after Memorial Day, we realized that was too soon. For the state, that was too soon. And these numbers took back off again and went up. But interestingly, after Memorial Day, we saw it taking off in the younger age groups. I think the older people said, heck no, I'm not going to be part of this. And they continued to hunker down. Whereas a lot of our younger people were out, mixing it up. We'll just say in the bars and places like that. And back to work. And we saw a very significant uptick there. A lot of statistics here. And I can direct you to these sites if you're interested. I'll be happy to provide it. But the one that I was going to draw out is the one I told you about earlier, that 15 to 24 age group. And you can see that they're accounting right now for about 15% of all of our new cases, or about 10% of all of our new cases, and 15% overall. But the severity for that age group is hospitalizations. That age group only represents about 2%, and deaths in that age group are extraordinarily low. That's the problem with statistics. I think it's important that we know that. However, if it happened to any one of our kids, it's no longer a statistic. So it's important to know, but it doesn't mean that we can adopt the attitude, well, this isn't very significant for the age group, so we don't have to deal with that. I thought that you would want to see that. Now, this is right here. This is the barometer that I follow every day. This truly tells us what's happening in Pinellas County. This is how stressed the healthcare system is. And you can see that as of about 3 days ago, almost 10% of all hospital beds were occupied by COVID patients, but more disturbingly, 1/3 of all ICU beds were occupied by COVID patients. The significance of that is that just a couple weeks prior to this, that ICU bed occupancy was down below 10%. And it just exploded after Memorial Day. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of people on ventilators. We are learning more about treating this disease and about keeping people off of ventilators. We have a lot of ventilators available, so we're not approaching the New York system. So here's a little bit of good news. As of today, these numbers are down a little bit. We were live streaming with our medical director yesterday. We talked about a lot of statistics, and I want to be careful here. We were a little bit encouraged by what we're seeing in that the numbers in Pinellas County, at least over the past 4 or 5 days, give the appearance of leveling off. That's a pretty short period of time to make any sort of statements. So we want to be really careful, but it is the first time we've seen it since Memorial Day where, we started to see a slight leveling of the numbers. And then now today, the ICU beds are down to about 28% occupancy. So again, I can share these websites with you if you're interested. Make no mistake about it, though, even if it's leveling off, we're still in this for the long haul. We'll be dealing with this through the rest of this calendar year. I can almost assure you of that. Now, remember we said there were 2 things when we're evaluating a risk. There are 2 things that we need to look at. The first is potential or likelihood. The other is the severity, and severity speaks to if the bad thing happens, how bad will it be? And no surprise to anybody. And this chart I know is very, very busy. I only use it sort of to demonstrate that, this in severity, there are a lot of different levels with this particular bug. 0 being, we have a certain segment of our population that are infected by coronavirus and never develop symptoms. We have another subset that gets infected and has mild symptoms and they just treat themselves at home. Another subset that develop symptoms and ultimately end up in the hospital. And then unfortunately, we have a subset out of that that goes on to need an ICU bed. And out of that, a subset that ultimately needs to be put on ventilator and other life support. So the severity is kind of all over the place. And make no mistake about it, this is not a seasonal flu. It's just not. And I want to dispel that. That's not what we're seeing in our ERs. We're not seeing this being a seasonal flu. It's not behaving like any sort of flu virus that we've seen before, especially with the multitude of different symptoms. Frankly, I have to mention that we're just now beginning to discern some longer term effects, and we still don't know what the extent of that is going to be. So, but I will tell you, going back to severity, that 8 out of 10 COVID deaths in the U.S. have been adults 65 and older, and in Pinellas County, that pretty much follows suit. You all know that we've had a significant problem in our long-term care facilities here in Pinellas County. That continues. We have a little bit better handle on it, but the vast majority of the people that die from COVID-19 are our older, susceptible population. And again, the age group that we're talking about, 15 to 24, is, at the time this chart was created, actually there was only 1 death in Florida attributed to COVID-19. So, wow. Just hit you with a lot of statistics and a lot of information about how bad it can get. It can range from no symptoms at all to, we have people dying from this. It's mostly our older population who has some sort of underlying medical problem. But please make no mistake, there are younger people that develop the severe aspects of this disease and go on to have a bad outcome. And so, can I send my student to MYF or not? It's a difficult decision. Once again, please let me say there is no right or wrong decision here. It's absolutely a uniquely personal decision, and you would not be judged on how you make that decision. I absolutely kind of feel for the struggle that you're having right now, especially with going back to the public school systems. Your decision is influenced by a lot of things, and I just want to tell you that one of the things I would hope you consider is, who else would your student be exposed to? Do you have someone living in your household, maybe a grandparent or aunt, uncle, somebody that does have some of the known comorbidities, some of the known underlying diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, any sort of lung disease, and certainly anybody within a compromised immune system. I would think that that would factor into your decision making. Not that you would necessarily, you would say, I can't send my student, but it might prompt you to speak with the physician who takes care of the older person and talk to them about that, and you know, have a good conversation about, you know, is this right for my student at this time? And then certainly I want to encourage you to talk to your child, or I know they're not children, sorry, but your child's physician, and just have a really good conversation with them. You know, your physician should know your child, their overall level of health, if there are any pre-existing conditions that would influence this decision, and you know, really consult with your family physician or your child's physician in the process of making this decision, or the one that talks about sending them back to school. And so it all comes down to this risk benefit. And when we're weighing that out, when we're trying to balance that, how we get benefit to drop even a little bit further is by risk management. So we have this known risk, and we talked about the statistics really briefly, but this is how likely it is for this age group, and this is how severe we've seen it get. But yet there's this benefit of sending our student to youth group to work on that foundation. So what could we do to even change the equation a little bit more? And that's where risk management comes in. And this is not new to y'all. This is not new by any means. As a matter of fact, I got a feeling all y'all are too young to remember duck and cover drills. I can barely remember duck and cover drills, but back during the Cold War, we thought somebody was gonna send nukes to the United States, and we made our children get under their desks. And parents fretted, is it safe to send my child to school in this Cold War era? And here in Florida, we've had to deal with tornado drills, especially ever since the High Point Elementary incident I think that was back in the 80s. So we've had to worry about the severe weather and sending our children to school. And then back in 2001, we had unprecedented attacks on our homeland here. And all of a sudden we had these things called threat levels. And I can remember meeting with parents back then, because I was a youth group leader, to talk about, is it safe for our youth to leave Largo on a mission trip in 2001? And so we struggled with the risk management, back then. And then regrettably, for the last couple of years, we've had to talk about risk management of our schools because of active shooter situations. And that we've modified our schools dramatically as a result of that phenomenon. So our schools are fortified. We have an armed security person there, and all of that is part of the risk management. When I think about risk management, it was going back to when I can still remember the day my oldest daughter drove away for the first time by herself. I still remember standing in the driveway and wondering, but we practice risk management even then. We make our student take a driver's course. We make them practice with us in the car for many months. They have to pass an exam to get their license. And then I'll go further. I will tell you that my daughters were not allowed to have anybody in the car for their first couple of months of driving, nor were they allowed to have the radio on. I don't know if they did that or not, but they weren't allowed to have the radio on because we know that teen drivers, when they get into an accident, it's statistically most often a distraction issue, especially with the friends being in the car. So my daughters didn't like it, but they understood. 2 or 3 months later, then they earned the right to have one person in the car. All of that is what we call risk management based on what we know about the statistics. You practice it every day. When you get in the car and you put on a seatbelt, when you drive to church, do you think you're going to be in an accident, much less a severe accident that could take your life? No, you don't. I mean, but it's somewhere, there's a statistic that says this is how likely that is. You could be involved in a severe accident. So what do? We put on our seatbelt every single time. And nowadays our cars have airbags. And this is an important analogy, y'all, because just because you have an airbag, maybe you even have the cool side curtain airbags, which are hugely effective, by the way. Maybe you have airbags all around you. You get in your car and say, I don't need my seatbelt because I have my airbags. So the analogy here is going to be masks and social distancing. When we get down to that discussion, seatbelts and airbags, masks and social distancing, those things are designed to work together. What do? The seatbelt doesn't reduce the chance you're going to get in an accident, but it certainly manages the risk. It lowers your chances of being significantly injured. Same as strapping our children into an approved seat, which we do with our grandchildren every single time. My youngest daughter lives 2 streets over. When we go to visit, the grandgirls get strapped in their car seats for a 2-block drive. And that's part of managing risk. And so we do it all the time. And so in the next 5 or 10 minutes, what I will explain to you is what we are doing to propose to keep your students safe while they come back to campus. And it comes down to understanding how the virus spreads. As Casey mentioned, it's outdoor only. Arrival screenings, facial masks, social distancing, hand hygiene, cleaning and disinfecting, managing fomites, which we will talk about, and then some other considerations. And it comes down to parents maintaining that balance, where the benefit of your student being there outweighs the risk to them. Now, these are the slides I use for the small group leaders. I'm not going to read every line because this was frankly designed to train them to make good decisions and to manage our students on campus. But I will go through them briefly because I think it's important for you to know the information that they received. And, we told them that everyone has to be considered potentially positive because there is a significant percentage of our population that is asymptomatic and but can yet spread the disease. CDC is still saying 2 to 14 days onset after exposure, but in reality, it's about 5 to 6 is the average. And the absolute best fact that we have is the best way to prevent COVID-19 is to avoid being exposed to the virus. And with that in mind, we have a little graphic here about how your respiratory droplets, as we speak, as we sing, as we shout, we expel respiratory droplets that carry coronavirus. And the larger droplets tend to fall to the ground very quickly, but a certain percentage of our expired respiration is aerosolized. That's another way of saying misted, and that tends to hang in the air. And that we think is a very significant way for other people to be exposed. And so by maintaining that distance, it is less likely that we would be exposed to those respiratory droplets when a person coughs, sneezes, or even talks. Now the CDC is even talking about the relationship of time. In other words, you could be right next to an exposed person, but only for a very short period of time. CDC is defining that as 15 minutes. We're not going to take that chance. We're just going to, maintain the 6 feet. We do know that this virus is very easily transmitted, and that's why it's been so significant throughout the world. But here I will spend a minute and talk about this, because we do know that the severity of the illness is influenced by dose plus exposure time. So dose would be the amount of those respiratory droplets that make it into someone's body, and exposure time would be over what period of time. It would be standing next to an infected person or being in an enclosed space with them for a long period of time. So you might have one very large dose that could cause the disease, or you might have very small dosing, but over a longer period of time that could also cause disease. And so the issue there is space. It's those aerosols in the air and airflow patterns. And so the reason that we're even talking about this at all and saying that we feel it could be done safely outside is because outside is an unconfined space with higher airflows, and that means dilution of those respiratory droplets, and it means disbursement of those respiratory droplets. And so it does create a little bit of a safer environment. However, it is not a substitute for masks and social distancing. We have encouraged Casey and her team, and they have actually done this to a very detailed degree, to plan for the Florida weather, that if your student is on campus meeting outside and we get a lightning storm roll in, there is a plan for that. And yet we're not going to give up the social distancing and the masks. So I just wanted you to know that has been discussed, and there's a plan in place, and the small group leaders are aware of that, and the small group leaders were encouraged to discuss it ahead of time with the students so that it's not a surprise when it occurs. And we challenge the small group leaders to know in advance how they'll occupy the time while students are isolated inside. We will be screening the students, in fact, everybody, volunteers, students, everybody that comes on campus today. I stopped by this morning to pick up 6 cases that have been delivered to the church. All I had to do is step in the door, and yet I got a full screening. And that's just the way it has to be. If you come into the church or onto the campus, there is a screening. So parents, this is particularly important for you to know that we've set our definition of fever at 100 degrees. You may know that the medical definition is 100.4, but the infrared thermometers are not terribly accurate. They're pretty good. They're a great screening tool. But if you say that our threshold is 100.4, the child may have a significantly higher temperature than that by the time you're reading. In other words, you could read 100.2 and say you're okay, and they're actually 100.6. So we went a little bit lower. There is a plan that if a student arrives, they've been in a hot car, they rode their bike, they've been outside, and they're measuring around 100 degrees, we will allow them to sit for a few minutes in some air conditioning and retake that temperature. But if we can't get it to come down, or if any of these symptoms are present, cough, which of course excludes chronic cough like you might find in asthma, shortness of breath, sore throat, muscle aches, changes or loss of taste or smell, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, or knowledge of being exposed to anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19 within the past 14 days. And those questions get asked of everybody that comes in, and it pretty much is an absolute exclusion criteria, just out of an abundance of caution. We might ask some additional questions. We've said that as we get this started, we're going to try to have some medically trained people to do the screenings. And a great example of that is a student comes in and they measure 100. And I say, well, did you have any Tylenol? Yeah, I took Tylenol two hours ago. Well, if you're 100 on Tylenol, what's the temperature going to be not on Tylenol? So those are kind of things that we would work through. But there is a real possibility that our students might not be able to attend campus that night. So I beg the ACDC parents, and I'm going to beg you to please keep your student home. If there's any hint, before a little sore throat, they might come to youth group. I get it. They want to come see their friends. Hey, just let me go. I'm fine. But any hint of symptoms or your parental intuition, my student just doesn't look right, is acting over fatigued, just doesn't seem to be right, we're please ask you to err on the side of caution and not have them attend that evening. And that's just the plan to keep our entire church family safe. And then we would ask you just to please be prepared in the event your student doesn't pass the screening process. So whoever drops them off, we would be asking that person stay until the screening process is complete. Hopefully you can see the safety and the rationale and the abundance of caution. And I would even accept overabundance of caution. I would even accept that term. But you know, we're kind of out there making sure that that balance stays where it needs to be. We are using no-touch thermometers. This is just how that works. We do maintain a screening log of everybody that comes into the campus. This is being done right now. And the reason for this is that if in a couple of days somebody comes back and says, well, this person tested positive and they were on campus, we can go back and immediately see who else was on campus, and then you know, ask some questions, and then the Pinellas County Health Department can do contact tracing, which is to go backwards and talk to anybody else that could potentially be affected. Anybody that's been screened receives a green wristband, and we encourage all staff and volunteers to identify those that don't have the green band, and then we make sure that we get them screened so that they can be on campus. We encouraged our small group leaders to consider in advance, you know, how it would be handled if a student is not able to participate on one evening. And my idea and my thought for them, and hopefully this, you know, is to engage the whole group. The very first time we meet is to engage the whole group, and it would be framed as, you know, it's going to happen. There's going to be times when somebody can't participate, and how do we provide support to that person? And I'm willing to bet that the students themselves come up with some really supportive and positive, you know, solutions to this. Facial masks, you know, there's been so much controversy in the media, but I want to tell you that, you know, the science is that it probably helps. And as you can see from this graphic here, if nobody's wearing a mask, there's, you know, the transmission probability is pretty high. If only one person is wearing a mask, the probability comes down a little bit. But if both people are wearing a mask, that's our lowest probability of transmission. And we do think that that is effective. We don't know what percentage it is. I've heard as high as 60 or 70%. I'll take it. You know, I'll take 20 or 30% if that's going to help shift this balance. Do want you to know that you've heard about these N95 masks, and they're called that because they're 95% effective against viral transmission, but we can't get those in the general populace. As a matter of fact, our nurses can't get them. So, we don't have N95, so we're down to surgical and cloth masks. And as a result, that is not a substitute for social distancing. They're not as effective. This is about handling of used masks, and of course, they need to be disposed of. And then we talked to our small group leaders about the proper wearing of a mask. You know, I'm seeing this out in public. I'm seeing the mask under the chin. Why bother? Is it keeping your neck warm? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that does. I've seen it. I've seen people pull their mask down so they could talk to me. Why bother? Sort of defeats the whole point. So we need the masks to cover the mouth and the nose and to be worn properly. And we really emphasize to our small group leaders that compliance was the compliance was the key. How to remove the mask, and of course we can teach this to our students. How to unhook the mask and remove it without touching the eyes and the nose, because we know that those are areas where the virus can be transmitted, and of course, cleaning the cloth masks. Now remember, we said masks and social distancing. That's being identified as from CDC as about 6 feet or 2 arm length apart as a minimum, That we are not proposing that the youth would be gathering in groups or allowing contact games. And I will tell you that siblings in the same household would be allowed to sit together. But other than that, it would be 6 foot distance. Remembering that some people are asymptomatic and how important this is. We encourage our small group leaders to think about how do you actually measure that, and just by eyeballing it probably isn't quite right. You probably need a little bit more distance than what you think. And then as the kids start to get restless and start to get you know, really into the evening, you know, how do we make sure that we maintain that? We talked about the washing hands, just so critically important. the whole 20 seconds. And then our small group leaders are being encouraged to have hand sanitizer, and the church itself has quite a few standalone hand hygiene stations that can be moved around. Hopefully would be deployed and will be deployed for this purpose. Cleaning and disinfecting is ongoing. We've had just hours and hours of discussion with our church staff and our great janitorial staff, and it's being done every day. The cleaning and disinfection will be increased as people start to come back to campus. And we asked our small group leaders to look for opportunities to help out with that. Now, fomite, if you're not aware, fomite is a non-living object that transmits disease-causing pathogens. A vector is a living object, like a mosquito. But a fomite is a non-living object that transmits disease. And examples are there, like tissues, a hymnal, a Bible, a cup. And we encouraged our small group leaders to make sure that we were eliminating those means of transmissions. We talked about the fact our students will be outside and the need to hydrate with disposable water bottles and disposable cups, and talked to our small group leaders about watching for signs of heat-related illness. One restroom will have designated restrooms only, one student at a time, and then of course emphasizing hand hygiene. We will have masks available. We obviously want the student to bring their own, but they get broken. Sometimes they get forgotten, they get dropped in the dirt, and we will have masks available. And we encourage our small group leaders to have small bottles of hand sanitizer available. So the whole thing comes down to that balance, making sure that the benefit outweighs the risk and keeping the balance balanced. We want to tell you parents, as we told our small group leaders, you are not alone. The decision to have your child participate is uniquely yours, but you're not alone in making the decision. We want to encourage you to reach out to Casey and her team, or our executive pastors, or anybody on the medical subcommittee. We'll be happy to talk to you and try and answer what questions that we can if we don't get them answered tonight. We know that these are tough decisions. I sit here and my 7-year-old granddaughters, that's not my call, but yet I sit here and lay awake at night worrying about it. Did they go back to school or not? And so I appreciate the position that you're in. Hopefully we've given you a little bit of information. Encourage you to talk to your family physician or your child's physician. And if you do have a vulnerable person in your household or that your student is regularly in contact with, that you consider that, and then maybe talk to that person's physician as well. So I went through it pretty quick, and just thought we'll stop and be happy to answer any questions. Jonathan, I love your companion there. Oh, is he? That might be frozen.
That's his still photo. That's what comes up.
That's his still photo. Okay.
On video. Scott, thank you
the
so
cat
much.
Looks like really
Very intent. Very focused. Thank you, Scott, so much. That
so I want you to know I'm coughing because I've been talking, not because I have any problems.
You have to justify every cough these days. Like allergies. So guys, you can ask any question to Scott about the presentation, or if there's something else that's related, but maybe he didn't mention, he's offered his time and mind to us. So feel free to just ask whatever it is that you'd like to know from him if you've got anything.
I have one. Casey?
Sure.
Yeah.
And Scott, have we said that all the different grade levels are going to be meeting at church at the same time? I kind of got the idea. Well, anyway, I'll just let you answer that question. At the same time, or just kind of different times, so there's just more separation and less people on campus?
So that's a great question, Valerie. What Megan and I have been talking about from the youth ministry standpoint is if you walk through campus, I just did like a mental picture in my head one day when I was sitting at my desk. There's probably about 13 to 15 areas outside on our campus that could potentially be used as small group spaces outdoors. So I think that it would be feasible to have the groups come and all kind of have their own little area. Also very open to pushback or different thoughts on that. We had another thought as well that we could leave it open for a couple hours, like the time slot where students could come, and have groups join in when it was convenient for them in like a smaller dosage. So let's say that we had like 2 hours on campus, and maybe groups could come for an hour at a time. And so they could kind of shift around if they wanted to. But that's still very much in the construction phases. So if you've got feedback on that, would love to hear what your thoughts are.
It is a great question, and frankly, one of the things that we will have to really be on top of is that if the students are going to arrive in roughly the same time frame, we'll be keeping them spaced out in order to do the screening, and then getting them to their designated meeting space. And then also, if there is inclement weather, I know Casey's already identified where each grade group would go. And
well, we're working on that one.
Well, I saw a draft. I guess I saw a draft, but
yeah.
But that will be identified so that we don't have a lot of people bunching up.
Valerie, what are your thoughts on that, if you have any?
Well, I was also, as Scott was detailing the arrival, I was also thinking about normal youth group and how so many people are arriving at one time, even in, so I was just wondering if,
yeah.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so what we would probably do is have all of the small group leaders already at the places that they're going to be at around campus. And as soon as that student checks in, they'll go straight to their small group location, so that it's not that there's going to be a bunch of congregating and socializing, because initially what we're going to be trying to do is to keep all of the grade groups separated of contacts, so that we don't have as much I forget what the word is, but as much cross-contamination. So that, I hope that helps in answering your question.
Okay.
But as I said, this is all still in the construction phases, and I've definitely never had small groups gather during a pandemic before. So we are very much open to thoughts and feedback as we figure out the safest way to do it. So great question.
I'm just guessing, but it seems like there might have to be not necessarily how many grade levels, 7, not necessarily 7 different hours or so, but something so we just don't have so many people arriving at the same area at the same time.
We could stagger entry times where like maybe 6th grade arrives at 5, 7th grade arrives at 5:15, and kind of stagger it like that. That could solve it, because then we would leave the car circle clear.
It's actually a great idea.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah. I was picturing kids just staying in their cars until it was their turn. But this might just help not make parents wait for 30 minutes too, while everybody gets screened, Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was going to say, that was something I was going to bring up anyways. We have another meeting next week to go over and finalize some things, get a clearer idea of how we're actually going to go right from when they're going to be screened to the end of the night, and go through all that process. So whether that be staggering by grades or possibly even just staggering middle school and high school, that would help a lot as well. But that's a really great question, and I'm glad that you brought that up so that we can start that conversation on it.
You know what my one concern is, though, is that if a parent has a middle schooler and a high schooler, then they would have to, because I like the idea in theory, but then if we've got someone with like a 7th grader and 11th grader, they're going to have to circle the parking lot a few times, which, I mean, in light of current circumstances, maybe parents wouldn't mind too much just hanging out, but it could pose some complications. So we'll have to workshop it a little bit, but I think some sort of staggered entry could be done.
And even if there were a few combinations of a 7th and 11th grader, for example, it's going to happen with some families, but it's not all families.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Other questions?
So I mentioned the website. I didn't post it. Actually, I think I can. Let's see. Chat. Well, I would just say it's COVID-19, COVID-19 .pinellascounty.org. COVID-19, COVID-19.pinellascounty.org, and then data database, and then healthcare system. And from there, you got to look for, there's a couple other links in there that take you to the deeper, if you want to drill down into the statistics. But the healthcare will tell you what our bed occupancy is like. Right now in Pinellas County, the healthcare system is stressed, but we're not overwhelmed. We're not seeing it in EMS. I mean, we are seeing COVID-19 in EMS, but we're not overwhelmed. Other than all of the protective gear our paramedics are wearing, we haven't had to change our treatment modalities or anything. There is a plan to do that if the healthcare system were to become overwhelmed, and that would be a point where we would be talking to the church about everything has to stop if we get to that point. Right now, though, we're okay. We're stressed. There's no doubt. And when you look at the bed availability, keep in mind that a lot of hospitals quit taking elective procedures, and that helped as well. But the COVID bed occupancy is a really, really good barometer. There's just not much controversy to that. They're either there or they're not. And hopefully we're seeing that start to stabilize. Lots of prayers, but I will, regardless of whether that's stabilizing or not, we're in this for a long. We are.
Yeah. I thought you guys would have more questions in this.
No, me too. Well, if you guys think of anything, then just let us know. Meg, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the exact same thing. I was going to say, if anything comes up, you want to talk to us about anything, have any ideas, questions, concerns, Casey and I are both open, email or call. Yeah.
And we'll just keep you guys in the loop on next steps. At this point, like we've said before, we don't have a date for all of this because we're more so bound to the circumstances, not the calendar at this point. So it's really just doing all these preliminary measures of seeing where our parents and families are at in terms of what are we comfortable with, doing meetings like this so that you guys and anyone else who watches later, if they couldn't be here, just know what we're thinking. And then we'll just keep you guys in the loop kind of step by step as we get closer to that point. And yeah, if you think of more stuff like the entryway thing, Valerie, that hadn't come across my mind yet, just with all the other factors at play. So if you think of something, we won't be offended if you shoot us an email and say, hey, have you thought of this? And we'll either say, yeah, here's our thoughts, or no, thank you for bringing it up. So just let us know if you think of anything and we'll be in touch as well.
Yeah, can I just echo that, is that for the health subcommittee, which I participate on, we've talked about this and pretty much decided that this is important enough to open this door and see if we can't do this. We feel like we can manage the risk, but overwhelmingly the people on that committee was like, well, what do the parents think? And so the parental response and input, feedback, wishes, desires, suggestions is just crucial. Number one priority is keeping our students safe in all aspects of campus life and MYF life, is keeping the students safe. And so to have that constant feedback from you all, speaking as somebody from the healthcare team, that's really important.
Yeah, the most important thing for us right now is partnering with you guys as parents, because it's best for your kids and for your students, because you all have unique circumstances, like Scott said a lot. And so we want to make sure that you guys are comfortable and that you're a part of this process as well.
Casey has my email and even my phone number. I'm happy anytime. And
you can post it on Facebook.
Yeah, not so much on Facebook. Can I just tell you, I held off on Facebook for like years and was driving my daughters crazy. So finally I jumped on. Oh my gosh.
It's the whole thing. It's the whole world.
It's the thing, man. Yeah, don't put my phone number there, okay? But look, I seriously, and we're in the church directory. Chris and I are in the church directory, and this is our church family. And so whatever we can do to to help out, to answer questions. We don't have all the answers. That is the problem with this crazy thing. And that's what's frustrating me, is that we're like 4, 5, 6 months into this, and you would think that the world experts would be a little bit further along. But look, we're all like, and I hate to use this expression, we're all in this together as our church family. Let's partner together and do what's best for our students here. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We will be in touch with next steps soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.